Well, the boys of the Nerdcast. Well, it's good to see you. Anyone but anyone is likes of you, although that castle arouses suspicion. Welcome to the Duke's Emporium. What are you buying? Just something an old friend of mine used to say. Well, I want to wish you the happiest luck for your future in podcasting. And should you need anything for the road ahead, you know where to find me. Thank you for your patronage.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Northern Nerdcast. I actually have two guests today because I have my Resident Evil aficionado, Nathan, from Inside the Game. And joining both of us is the Duke himself, Aaron LaPlante. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
How's it going, everybody? I've been waiting for you viewers. Anyone has heard of the likes of you.
We had Katie on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I told her, I said, the last Resident Evil I played was 6. I could not get into 7. I'm not like a huge fan of the jump scares, but Nate's actually got me wanting to play 8. From what I've heard, it's like a first-person Resident Evil 4 almost. So to me, that really stands out. So, but your character is one of probably the highlights for me, anyways. Just you just exude this like positive, almost Cheshire cat kind of like attitude, and it's like Nathan was saying off the recording, like you feel safe like when you're in the room, in like just appearing in the mansion or wherever you are. But there's just like this calmness, and I don't know if it's the voice or if it's the false sense that, oh, is he actually gonna murder me? Or but
I think like a huge part for me was when I was running around the castle for my life. There's a part where Lady Demetress, I don't know how to pronounce her name, but her and her daughters are trying to kill you. And the entire time I'm trying to solve these puzzles, and I would just always run back to my famous Duke, and then I would hear his nice low voice, and it'd be like, "Oh, what are you buying?" And it'd just be like, "Oh,
what are you buying?"
Yeah, no, that definitely. I think you guys are definitely not alone on that. And I think the thing about the Duke, at least for me, when I first started doing it, because one of the things is when you do these video games, they're so secretive, so they don't tell you very much. Which there's a really famous text about the craft of acting called An Actor Prepares. And it's called that for a reason. As far as I'm concerned, that's all an actor does, is find, sort of like a predetermined set of circumstances, familiarize yourself enough with them, and then do them as if they weren't predetermined. But the problem is with games is that like you're going to go into the recording session and you want to prepare and you want to, I don't really do all that backstory bullshit, but some people do. And so you want to sort of think about it or sort of prepare a choice. But when you go in there, you have no idea what's going on. And the reason I'm going on and on about not knowing what's going on is because even while I was recording it, I was having these suspicions like, when does he turn bad? When is he going to try to... Because I'm familiar enough with Resident Evil to know that like everything, like I said before, everything you come across is trying to kill you.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, and they wouldn't tell me. And so as we sort of kept going, I thought, well, they wanted me to be as friendly as possible. They kept saying that, like, make sure it's friendly. In fact, every take of every line, we would go back and forth. We would do a take that was purely friendly and supportive. And then we would do another take that was kind of mysterious. And after a while, I started coming up with this musicality of the voice to where he would go up and down and odd parts of the sentence. And the reason why is so I wanted to sort of like, if anything, I wanted to kind of disorient the Ethan character so he doesn't know what's going on. So
anyone has heard of the likes of you, a hero searching for his daughter.
You know what I mean? Like up and down, up and down. And so, so yeah, it's funny, like, but I didn't realize like just how much support he would be. I thought it would just be kind of like a little bit of a respite, but then they tried to kind of explain it to me a little bit, but I was actually completely unprepared with how the fans have taken to the Duke for sure.
So now I don't know if you can touch base on this or if what people are saying are true, but I had heard that at one point the Duke was supposed to be the 5th Lord. I don't know if there's any truth to that.
Yeah, I can't confirm that specifically, but I can tell you that throughout the process of like auditioning for it and stuff, when I first auditioned for it, they gave me this dummy script, because that's another thing in games, that when the scripts that they give you to audition with are not going to end up anywhere near the actual game. They're kind of like, they sort of like suggest a character, but that's about it, because they don't, for anybody that doesn't get the part, they don't want them going and blabbing about what's going on in the game. So, and the people that don't have to sign an NDA. So I did my first audition, and then when I went back for the second one, that's when they showed me a picture of the Duke. And at the time, he was still just as big, but he was bald, and he had kind of like a creepier looking face, and kind of like it almost looked like he was kind of had some like sores on his face and stuff. And so I kind of thought that too, but then as I got into it, when I saw the design again, he has that kind of cherub-like face and nice haircut and everything. And I think with the sigil and everything, I think that maybe at one time they did plan him to become bad, but there's nothing. It's funny, all these fan theories or whatever, that's another thing I was unprepared for. The fans are so much more any of this shit. I mean, like they wait, can I swear on this, by the way?
Absolutely, no worries.
I don't want you to, I don't want to be like, fuck, we gotta be
okay. Well, let me just tell you. Okay, so before you came on, two of my friends that normally do the show with me, they both have never played Resident Evil Village, so they didn't want to be in on it for spoilers. But we just had a chat with John St. John, Duke Nukem.
Oh, yeah.
So you can I don't think any level of swearing will compare to what we just recorded. So don't worry about it.
Good. Yeah, I'm actually doing a convention with John in October, and the late October, like around Halloween, we're doing the NotCon Halloween.
So you're the special guest that he said he couldn't talk about. So you.
Well, that's funny. If he couldn't talk about it, they constantly post about it on Twitter, and they're constantly asking me to say that I'm going to go there. So even something a secret, I don't know what.
No worries. But yeah, so just say what you can do. It like I don't get monetized for this, so like I don't think I can get penalized. So do it. You say whatever you want to say.
Nice.
So I mean, okay, you probably get asked this, often, but when did you realize, or like what made you realize that you wanted to be a voice actor? Like, were you doing this like in high school? Were you doing like acting and getting into theater? Like, what's kind of your background, I guess, with all this?
Yeah, I mean, I think that acting, it's just kind of one of those things that not too kind of a boring story, just like you're a kid and you're kind of obnoxious, or you're hungry for attention, and then your parents kind of steer you towards something, maybe you can get that energy out. And in school there were opportunities to do theater and stuff like that, and so I did those. And you go on stage and you get your first laugh, and then suddenly you get what they call the acting bug, so to speak. So that's the acting thing. Pretty traditional, nothing too special. But I think when it comes to voiceover, I believe that it starts off with an instinct, and that instinct is when you hear somebody with a unique sounding voice, you want to replicate it. And sometimes it can be because you're making fun of them, like one of your teachers or something. Like if I'm in class and my science teacher used to talk like this really slow. So then when you go into the lunchroom and go like, hey, John, you're going to finish that piece of pizza? Hand it over. And then they laugh, and you're doing it for the benefit of your friends, for the enjoyment of your friends. But then after a while, once you realize that works, you start doing that in their life. I mean, almost everybody you'll ever talk to, when they tell you a story, they do a voice. So they say, yeah, I was at the grocery store and this bitch behind me was like, excuse me. And they'll do the voice. Doesn't matter if they're a voiceover actor or even an actor at all. And so I think when I was a kid, it came because I wasn't one of those kids that watched cartoons and dreamt of one day doing that. I didn't think for a second that I would ever get to do work like this. I knew that people do it for a living, but I didn't know at all how one gets to be a voice actor. So I think sometimes every actor makes certain choices with their characters. Some actors are really concerned with their wardrobe. They want to make sure that some actors are concerned with their props. Some actors are concerned with their hair. There's always like a little extra thing in addition to the character. And I think I just so happen to be interested in the voice of the character. So that was when I was a kid. And then as I sort of got older and I was doing plays and stuff, and I would just kind of do whatever character I was doing at the time. But then I started to get into sketch comedy. And when you do a sketch comedy show, we started a group, and we had a group in Hollywood for years. When you do a sketch comedy show, it's usually about a half hour long, and there'll be about 5 or 6 sketches in that half hour. And you have to change costumes and stuff. But for me, one of the best ways to differentiate between the characters is to give them a distinct sounding voice. So you do like 5 or 6 different voices. And I think that's what made others around me aware that I can do that stuff. Because I'm not one of those like genius voice actors, you know, like a Frank Welker or D. Bradley Baker, people who can do like the crazy bird sounds and that kind of shit. I mean, I can't do, or like Tom Kenny. I mean, he's just insane. I'm just a really good actor that can do voices sometimes. You know what I mean? So I'll poo-poo my voice ability, but I'll pat myself on the back for my acting ability. But that's kind of how it all sort of came to pass, I think. I mean, I had been doing it ever since I was a little kid, just not professionally, just to annoy the shit out of my parents and have my teachers get pissed off at me.
So I have one of my show-horts just actually sent me a message. He wanted to know what it's like to work with Genndy Tartt on projects like Hotel Transylvania, Samurai Jack, and Primal, which you were the lead spear. So he was wondering what it was like.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you so much for asking me about Genndy. I always try to mention him in almost every one of these things, even if somebody doesn't ask me about him, just because he is, you know, for anybody in any business, whether it be acting or anything, really, anything you're trying to do, you always need somebody to sort of help you along, or at least believe in you. And when I first started doing voiceover, because I came to town and I was doing the sketch comedy stuff, and then a buddy of mine happened to be talking to a casting director, an animation casting director, and she was talking about, you know, it's hard to sometimes to, you know, because she worked in movies. And they only work with famous people. I mean, generally famous people are the only ones that get to be voices in movies nowadays, especially. And some of them are great actors, but they're shitty voice actors. So she was complaining about that and saying, you know, we just need some good, solid talent. And he said, well, my friend Aaron has a distinct sounding speaking voice, but he also does voices every now and again. You should meet him. So I went in and I had one of those meetings that we like to call water bottle meetings, where you go in, you don't know what the meeting's about. You don't even know why you're meeting, but they give you a water bottle. You get to leave with a water bottle. So that's cool. After a while, my car was just full of water bottles. But so I did this meeting and we sat down, and what was nice was it was probably supposed to be like a 20-minute meeting, and it wound up being like a 3-hour odyssey. We talked about everything under the sun. And she said, well, look, you know, you seem really interested and sincere, and you seem like you have a pretty good head on your shoulders. I don't have anything for you now, but, you know, who knows down the line. So then it was a few months later, and she messaged me and said that they're working on a Popeye movie at Sony. They're going to be doing a feature-length CGI redesign on Popeye, kind of like an origin story. And they needed somebody to do the temporary voice of Bluto. So I went on YouTube and I looked up all the old cartoons. And Bluto kind of talks out of the side of his mouth like this. And he's got kind of a rasp like this. It's a little bit deeper. And so I recorded myself doing some of the lines and I sent him in, and she said, they're perfect. Now what this is, it's called scratch tracks. That's what I first started doing. What it is, you know, these animated movies take years to make, and they're years and years in pre-production. And so a lot of times they'll get actors like me to come in and do the voice of a part in its entirety. And the directors will work with it, and they use animatics on a screen, which are basically just like comic book panels that are sort of like temp animation. And then they have my voice, and that's what they use for the presentation to the executives, or just to kind of help move the story along, or to flesh out the character, because they almost like test it out on me to see how an actor responds to the material and what an actor brings to it. And then once I've done that work, they throw my voice out and they give it to a famous person, which kind of sucks. But at the same time, what the hell? I'm getting paid and it's really neat to be working. Now, however, if I don't get a chance to end up in the actual movie, I'm working with the director when they're at their most vulnerable, when they're trying to sort of figure out what they're going to do with these characters. So the guy that was directing Popeye was Genndy Tartt. Now, the thing is, like I said before, I watched a lot of cartoons when I was a kid, but I didn't have an encyclopedic knowledge of who created them. And so I had watched Samurai Jack and Dexter's Lab and Powerpuff Girls and the Clone Wars and all these things that he was involved with and responsible for creating, but I didn't know he was. So when I went in there, I was just like, hi, how are you? You know, whatever. And Genndy, what's interesting about Genndy, now here's the thing, you can see why now that meeting with the casting director was 3 hours, because when I answer a question, I give you a whole back answer. Now here's the answer.
It's amazing.
Working with Genndy Tartakovsky, what's interesting about him is he's this ridiculous, mad genius, endlessly creative, endlessly, I mean, just hilarious and amazing and talented, but very just middle of the road. Not all crazy, not like his crazy shit comes out in his work. He's just a completely mild-mannered guy. In fact, somebody like me who has a lot of anxiety, you know, whenever I would work with them, I would feel, and to this day, sometimes I feel like when I leave the session, I just went on a date with a girl that's really out of my league. So I'm just like, I had fun. I think she had fun. I call her, or I don't know. Because at the end of the sessions, he would just be like,
that's hilarious.
Whatever. Okay. And so the thing is, you know, I always resent it when people say like, you know, hey, are you doing your buddy's show? You know, your buddy's next show? And I'm like, he's not my buddy. He's my boss. You know what I mean? I want people to think that he's like my buddy and he just gives me parts because we're friends. Luckily, I kind of proved myself on Popeye. So I've been in everything that he's done since that Popeye project, because the Popeye project never went anywhere. I worked on it for years and sort of helped out with it, but then it's been very incremental, because Hotel Transylvania 2 came along, and he was working on that while we were doing Popeye, and so I'd hear about it. And then what ended up happening is he let me be kind of to throw me a bone, because I think he felt bad about the Popeye thing. It didn't really go anywhere, and so he let me be in part 2, Hotel Transylvania. It's the wedding scene. So I did a bunch of monster noises basically in the background. And then after that, he rebooted Samurai Jack. And I played about 6 or 7 different characters in that 5th season of Samurai Jack. So we did that. And then when Hotel Transylvania 3 came along, they had this section with the Gremlins, which is just an amazing, hilarious sequence, kind of towards the beginning and relatively short. And he's like, well, you can do that. So I went in there and did that. And then now
that's hilarious.
And then Primal is the craziest thing ever. Primal, if you haven't seen it, climb out from under your rock and watch it. It's absolutely incredible. You know, it's kind of violent. You know, a lot of people that I meet say, oh, this is Aaron and he does voiceover, and like for their kids or something. And I'm like, I don't think your kid can watch a lot of the stuff that I do voiceover for, because Primal's really crazy violent. But I didn't audition for that or anything. Genndy originally, and I think he'll be comfortable with me sharing this because the info is kind of already out there. He always wanted to do a show about a kid and a dinosaur. And so some of the early designs, it's a little kid and his pet dinosaur basically going through the landscape. But what ended up happening, there's a lot of contributing factors. I should think one of them is that movie, The Good Dinosaur, came out. And that kind of came out around the time that he was working on Hotel Transylvania and stuff like that. And then also Samurai Jack, the 5th season of Samurai Jack is super violent. And so I think that he liked being able to sort of work with that kind of design. And then also, if you notice, there's a lot of sequences in Samurai Jack where there's no dialogue whatsoever. And I think he really, really likes that, because a lot of people say like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing. There's no dialogue in the show. I've never seen a show like that. And I'm like, yes, you have. Every cartoon didn't have dialogue like the earlier ones. So this is just kind of like a throwback to that. Also, they're not doing hand-drawn animation on paper, but they're doing hand-drawn animation with styluses on screen, and they do it at Studio La Cachette in France. So that one is basically, you know what that is? That is a ridiculously beautiful and amazing piece of art that I just get to walk in and go, "Nah!" and then say I'm part of it. You know what I mean? That's like, that'd be like if the Rolling Stones had a concert and they let me come on stage and just play the triangle with them. And then I got to say that I was in the Rolling Stones. So yeah, I know that's a really long answer to a very simple question.
Perfect.
That answer.
Absolutely.
That's really
And we're still doing that, by the way. There's more Primal to come. We're still working on it. There's going to be 10 more episodes. A whole nother.
Is that on Netflix or which?
No, it's on Adult Swim, but they've got all 10 episodes of the first season are on the Adult Swim hub on HBO Max. So if you go on HBO Max and search down and go to the Adult Swim hub, you can see all the episodes there.
Yeah, so we're not fortunate enough here in Canada to have that. We have Crave, so it's essentially the same thing. So there is the HBO Max that's part of it, but it's not its own streaming device.
Okay,
so.
well, maybe you can also too, if you just go on adultswim.com, all their content is there, so you can just go on there and you'll be able to find Primal on there.
So
really cool.
if you had the ability to voice any of the other roles in Village, whose would it be and why?
I mean, that's a hard question. Shit. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, I think that what it would have been fun, and I'm not going to say that there's no way on earth that I would be able to do this better than Jesse did it. But Moreau was such a neat character because that was such a neat voice. And also there was the motion capture element. Jesse was basically like hunched over the entire time. And he is absolutely incredible, Jesse, who did the voice of Moreau. But I think that would have been just really fun to do, I think, because you'd be able to come up with kind of a crazy voice and the physicality of it all, because that I'll say this is just kind of a blanket statement. My character didn't do any motion capture. So I think that, if anything, that's a better answer. I think that the question is maybe not playing a different character, but getting a chance to actually do that motion capture. Because I have done games where they put like a helmet on you and they put dots on your face. And then as you're recording it, they calibrate it to where the character basically, as you're talking, the character will actually move its mouth based on your mouth movements. I did something like that, but to be like in the full suit and in the environment with the other actors, sort of interacting with them, that would have been cool. Cause I basically was just by myself for all my lines.
Oh, that's really cool. So you're going to have to forgive me. I did some research on you, but I can't fully credit Wikipedia. So, according to Wikipedia, though, you were Leon in Resident Evil 4 and the shopkeeper. That is what Wikipedia says.
No, that's not true at all.
What the heck, man? I was reading that and I'm like, this can't be right. So, I mean, okay.
Yeah, I think when Resident Evil 4 came out, I was probably eating Thai food and crying myself to sleep. I mean, like I probably, when that game came out, I don't even think I was an actor at that time. I was just a guy trying to get through life. That's funny that you even say Wikipedia, because I've never looked myself up on Wikipedia. I thought that I didn't have a Wikipedia, and there have been a lot of people in comments saying like, man, I loved your performance as the merchant in Resident Evil 4 and this character. And I'm like, no, somebody else. Resident Evil 4. But again, that's the thing, is I think that now with like Twitch and with everything else, the fandom for this stuff is just blowing up. And so there's so much more information now than back then. I should think like when you did a game back then, you just kind of did it and it was a cool thing you did, but it wasn't really on a world stage like it is now.
Yeah.
I also forgot to say, 2 congratulations. Congratulations on being part of like quite possibly the biggest horror franchise around for video games. And the second one is you're hosting with Maggie video game awards.
It's the Future Game Show, and it's going to be done for Gamescom, and they're gonna. I think God, what a jerk! I don't even know when it's going to be on.
It's today.
It's today. Yeah. It's gonna. Yeah, that would be crazy. Well, I'm looking at my Instagram here. I think one of the last posts that it's going to be August 26th. So yeah, if Future Game Show at Gamescom, and yeah, that's going to be really cool. I mean, again, that's the thing, is I feel like it's a no-brainer to have Maggie do it because everybody was so stoked about her character. But then I think they threw me a bone and tacked me on with her. But she's awesome, and so it's going to be cool. And there's also I got to see a little bit of like the games that are coming out, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to be able to sort of have that show where you can kind of see what's coming. So yeah, it's going to be awesome. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's all. Yeah, well, so Nate, so he's part of a TV show that covers everything in the video. You know what, Nate? You go ahead. You explain it, because it's your baby. Well, you're part of it. So,
yeah, well, me and a few of my buddies, we do a weekly TV show. We review games, do discussions and news, and also do like a daily show. it's a whole wide variety of content involving video games. But I actually reviewed Resident Evil 8, and like it's honestly like my favorite games. It's my favorite game this year so far, hands down for sure. And then like between that one and 4, it's a toss up if it's my favorite Resident Evil game. And I think you got to give yourself a little credit, man. Your character, honestly, he's one of my favorite characters in the game, dude. He's awesome. Like I said, he's like your safe house, first of all. And like you often are the one who's kind of guiding you along your sort of quest, we'll call it. You get to a point where it's like, well, you've got to go to the underground, or you've got to go to to the creepy baby part, which I won't spoil anything about. I don't know if you looked up that stuff, man, but that was the creepiest thing I have ever seen in a video game to date, man. Oh.
But it's interesting too, because I think what's neat about this game, because I had played when I was a kid, I played the original, the first 2. And then I didn't really, I could, for years, I couldn't even afford a system of any kind. So I didn't play anything until in recent years, I was able to get one, and I'm kind of going back and playing some of the older ones. But what's neat about it is Resident Evil Village is that like there's aspects of it, and this kind of speaks to Brad, you were talking about sort of being apprehensive of playing because Resident Evil 7 was so terrifying, and it is so terrifying. I mean, I love scary shit, and it really freaked me out. But this one, what's nice about it is there are moments that are really unnerving and really scary for sure. But also, I think that they just went crazy with the variety of locations, variety of different opponents, not just the lords, but also just the lichens and the harpies flying around and stuff. Yeah. Also a variety of weapons and a variety of different ways that you can play the game. I would say it was open world, I guess. I mean, if that's it's not technically, but like, it gives you the sort of the choice. And then also too, what's neat about it is that it could be like a different experience every time you play it, because you guys are going to get a kick out of this. I'm halfway through the second time of playing it because I wanted to do all the things I forgot to do in the first one. Because in the first one, that's what's interesting about the franchise, and it kind of always has been like this. If you forget something, the game will just kind of let you forget it until you get really far down, and then you have to go back and do whatever. So you really have to pay attention. And when I was in Castle Dimitrescu, I never saw the Duke once. I never went in that room or whatever. I just, for some reason, I have no idea why. And after I got out of and actually like and her daughters or whatever, and I was walking out, I was kind of bummed out and got a little nervous because that's the first Lord that you have to deal with. And I thought, oh man, did they cut my character down? Because when I was recording the thing, they showed me stills and they showed me the Duke in that room with the garlic hanging and everything and the candelabras and everything like that. So I was really on the lookout for that. And I told just funny.
That is really funny.
I'm going to bring this up because you had mentioned that, I had mentioned to you that my friend does zombie pictures, and you said you wanted to see a smiling zombie Duke. So I don't know how well it's going to turn out on my phone. I'm getting the original copy shortly, but.
Oh, that's great.
So
perfect. So cool.
Awesome.
If we're able to get my friend Rob a shout out, he does like this is what he does for a living, is he creates he did pictures for The Walking Dead, and like he hasn't been involved, but if the Duke could actually give Rob a shout out, I'm sure he'd love that.
Oh, well, I've been waiting for you, Rob. Anyone has heard of the likes of you. An amazing artist doing zombie pictures of various pop culture icons. Like myself. Well, welcome to the Duke's Emporium. What are you buying? Just something an old friend of mine used to say. Well, Rob, should you need anything for the road ahead, you know where to find me. Thank you for your patronage.
Oh, that was awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of cameos, so that's why I'm kind of used to snapping right into those shout outs.
So
sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, you go ahead, man. Go.
Well, I was just kind of going to cut into like when you're auditioning, or even once you have the role, what kind of prep work do you have to do? Is there a lot of like kind of just talking to yourself, hyping yourself up, really setting yourself in characters? Or just like you said, kind of a switch that you can just flip and get yourself inside the character?
I think that, it's interesting because normally yes, normally there's a little bit of like I said before, every actor's different. Acting's ethereal. It's like a vapor. It's not concrete. It seems like any human being putting their mind towards it just kind of does it differently. And I think I like to be as prepared as possible. For me, though, it's basically just seeing the lines on the page so I don't stumble over them while I'm trying to record. That is actually the most important thing. And I know that sounds weird, but it's because I have this it's almost like a dyslexia thing where when I read something, I cannot retain it. I have to read it multiple times. Like cold reading something is almost impossible for me. So that's why when they don't want to share the lines with you and they don't want to show you the scripts, it's within their right, of course, because they're trying to protect their property. But I'm sitting here going like,
is there a little anxiety? Do you see?
And so I think, but here's the thing. Every part's different. There's a hell of a lot of prep for Primal, because Primal, the character, every emotion has to just be grunting and growling and like really hardcore screaming. And so like where you asked me about snapping into it and then snapping back out of it. When it comes to Primal, that's it, because I'll be sitting in there. When they do Primal, it's already fully animated when I go in there. So when I go in there, I actually watch the character do whatever the character's doing at one particular point, follow when he opens his mouth and when he's breathing and when he's screaming, and try to follow it and try to do it line by line. And so with that one, it's always, you're sitting in this room. It's an air-conditioned room. There's an engineer there. Genndy's sitting right there usually, or at least before the pandemic, he was sitting right there. And he would just go, let's go. And I would just kind of watch it and then just be like, is that okay? And it just, you know what I mean? It just back and forth. And so there's so much, what I do usually is the studio is about an hour away from my apartment. So when I'm driving there, I sing old 90s rap songs, but in an operatic voice. So I go, just hit the east side of the LBC on a mission trying to find Mr. Warren G. I just do that. And it really, I've got this special cough syrup. It's all holistic. It's from, I get it in Chinatown. Actually, it's got like marshmallow root, and actually Fred Tatasciore, the guy that plays the Incredible Hulk and has for years, and he does a shitload of video games. He's the one that turned me on to that stuff. Actually, when we were doing Hotel Transylvania 2, because he did a bunch of the monster sounds as well. We were there together. So that's kind of the prep for that. And when it comes to the Duke, what's interesting about the Duke is that a lot of times the choice of what voice you're going to do you can make a choice before and then bring it into the room, but you have to be able to switch it real quick if the director doesn't like it. The way Genndy and I work is like when I did Samurai Jack, I was lucky enough to not have to audition for any of those parts. There would be an episode that would come up and he would have his favorites. And then there'd be a part over here, like some great parts, like some of them really small, some of them actually really amazing. And he would just say, okay, Aaron, you'll play that part. So like, let's say that there's a guard in one of the last episodes of Samurai Jack, there's a bunch of these orcs and the main one starts talking and we didn't know, but I saw a picture of him and he has this big smile on his face. So then I put the big smile on my face. And when you're talking, suddenly there's something that happens with your lip. Well, that's one layer. Then because he's an orc, I figured he could talk like this. Okay, so then that's another layer. So then Genndy says, why don't you give him kind of like a raspiness? So then it becomes something like this. And then he says, okay, give it a British accent. So then it becomes something like this. What's going on there? Hello, what are you doing up there? So every voice is like 3 or 4 different layers on top of each other in the moment. For Resident Evil, this is kind of funny, and I've said this in other interviews, but I love talking about this aspect of it, is that when I auditioned for the part, this doesn't spoil anything, but towards the beginning, there's a scene where you go into this like woodshed and there's this frightened old man and he's got a gun and one of the lichens pulls him through the roof. It's like in the beginning of the game. Originally, I auditioned for that part just to be like a really small part. And I did the audition, and after I was over, one of the people involved with production called me and was like, sorry, you didn't get the part, which is interesting. It doesn't bother me. I don't get the part all the time. I audition for 5 or 6 things a week and usually don't book anything. It's just because that's the nature of the beast. But nobody's ever, they say, how do you deal with all the rejection? I'm like, nobody ever rejects me. They just don't call me, you know. But so this time the person called and said, you didn't get the part. And I was like, shit, all right, so, thank you. And they said, you didn't get the part because they're saving you for a bigger part. And I was like, well, that is something I've never heard, and I probably will never hear again. So I was like, all right. And I waited a little bit, and then finally I got the thing. And when, and their instructions were, they're playing around with accents. Because if you notice in the village, nobody really has it. There's little accents here and there, but they didn't want any accents to be specifically distinct. But I think in early iterations, they were playing around with having it sound maybe like an Eastern European accent. So then I said, okay, now gravelly tones, I love playing gravelly tones. Usually when I do a game or any kind of work, I try so hard to get as far away from my own voice as humanly possible. And a lot of times they have to kind of rein me back. So with this one,
the character sounded like this. I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters. Anyone has heard of the likes of you.
That was originally when I auditioned. That's what the character sounded like. And they loved it. And they loved it. And I was there for like 20 minutes and they had me moving around and doing all the things, getting cigar ash, kind of wiping it off and just kind of like doing all those motions. And it's funny, that ended up being my motion capture session. They basically took my audition and then got a lot of inspiration from it for the Duke. Not specifically, I mean, I'm not going to speak for them at all, but that's what one of the producers told me. So anyway, I go into the first day of a recording and I'm already, I was doing my singing because I didn't want to hurt my voice. I got my little special concoction. And I go in there and I do the first line.
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters.
Oh, Aaron, sorry. No. You don't have to do the Eastern European accent. Oh, all right. Let me try it again.
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters.
You know, it's not really that growly. We want him to be like super friendly and really welcoming. So maybe more light and do it like a British accent without actually having a British accent, just very like proper. And I was like,
I've been waiting for you, Mr. Winters. Anyone has heard of the likes of you.
And they said, perfect. That's the character. So that's how the voice came to be.
Wow.
So it's like a long, you know what I mean? It's a long thing. It's like actors, basically all actors do is just try shit out. And then the director says yes or no, you know? And so a lot of times when people say like, how did you create the character? I did not create the character. They created the character and I'm just helping the character come to life, you know? Because that's what's so great about animation and also video games is every character is created by like a whole village, pardon the pun, full of people. All the animators, all the people, everybody, even the designers that design his clothes, his motions, and then how they tell me to do his voice and the writers and everything. It's all by committee. It's pretty cool.
Like I follow a bunch of you guys on Instagram and did you record with, like, I know you said you did a lot of like the recording on your own, but did you actually get to meet the cast, or was this mostly recorded during COVID, or were you guys in the studio before that? Or
no, yeah, there was, what it was I had gotten the part and then we did a table read, and that's what I got to see all the people, but it was just a brief. We showed up, they didn't even have my character really fleshed out. They were basically just reading some of the scenes. I mean, they were still writing. So when I got there, they didn't have anything for me to read. And Neil was in England, so he wasn't even there. So I actually read Heisenberg's part, or what I came to find out later was Heisenberg's part at the table read. And then we all kind of briefly and awkwardly met each other there. And then they said, okay, well, you know, you guys will all be doing some work together, whatever, and we leave. And at the time I was going to be doing some motion capture, but then over the course of time, they realized they don't really need me to do as much motion capture. So all the other characters, they all kind of work together. And I actually would run into Katie. I ran into Katie a lot. I ran into my dear friend Jeanette a lot, kind of going back and forth. But I didn't get a chance to work with anybody. So then after the game came out, we did that little reunion thing. where we all met up at Paula Rhodes's place. And that was when I got to sort of meet everybody officially for the first time. And so with Maggie and I went out for drinks the other night just so that I could like meet her, because we're going to be doing this hosting thing together. So they're all awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think I missed out a little bit on the camaraderie just because I wasn't in the mocap set, because mocap is a really weird process, and it can be kind of stressful, and so it really makes you a family, I think, when you're doing it, if you're doing it for long enough.
That's awesome.
Yeah, man. You got something, Brad, or you want me to ask now?
Go for your question. I'm trying to process as we're talking.
I know that it's a lot. It's awesome. So again, I'm a huge Elder Scrolls and Fallout fan. Like, one for those big open world RPGs where you got like some really just big characters or iconic characters. Actors like Liam Neeson and Morgan Freeman. Guys like that have acted in these games. Now, have you like ever pursued any of those kinds of games, like something where you're more of like like just any of those RPG style games? I think personally you have the voice that would be perfect for any of those franchises.
I mean, well, that's the thing, is it's not really a matter of me trying to, it's just basically a matter of what I'm lucky enough to audition for, really. I mean, yeah, I'd give anything to do one of those games. It just seems like, it's funny, like sometimes you're just kind of at the mercy to what your agent finds out about. You know what I mean? I should think that doing Resident Evil Village and developing a relationship with the production company, well, Capcom, but also the American production company that helped out, I think that that's going to lead to more work. But a lot of times, it's really difficult because it's already hard enough to get involved with this stuff. It's even harder now, because what it used to be, or the way people used to go about it, is they would have these studios around where if you got an audition, you'd go into the studio and you'd give your audition or whatever, and that was it. And so they'd be only audition, because they relied on actors actually coming in and sending out their audition tape from a studio. You'd probably audition maybe like 30 people for a part. But now, with technology being what it is, and also the pandemic making everybody go inside, and any voice actor worth their salt has to have a good microphone, has to have a closet to record in or whatever. Now we can send out these auditions on our own computers. So they can audition 2,000 people if they want. You know what I mean? And the thing about it is, unfortunately, and it's not, I mean, I'm not complaining. Shit, I've been doing this for a long time, and it's just a very incremental thing. When somebody sees my name, it doesn't mean anything to them. Like when an MP3 comes in and it says, Orc King Aaron LaPlante, nobody really cares. But a little by little, they start to recognize you. And if you start to audition for some of these people enough, they start to become used to your voice. But I mean, I would give anything to do one of those games. My God, I mean, it would be, because my buddy Ben Davis is the voice of Dutch Vanderlyn. And so to hear all his stories about what it was like in the years spent, I mean, obviously he never once talked about it while he was doing it. But after, because the NDAs are insane. Oh,
I can only imagine.
So, but of course, after the game came out, I just called him up and said, "Can we have breakfast? And can you just tell me everything?" And he's like, so we did that. And what was neat was, he's kind of been my source of support when it comes to like how to handle getting to be in such a huge game. Because it's not like people are banging down my door or anything, but the attention is different than anything I've ever experienced. Usually, like Primal, the character doesn't speak in dialogue. So people love that show and think it's amazing, but none of the attention gets turned back on me, as it shouldn't. It's Genndy's thing, and it's, and so this is the first time. Most projects I do, I just do a role and it's fine. And then it's cool for me to say that I was in it. But as far as any sort of positive attention getting turned towards me, it's never happened until now. And it's kind of uncomfortable, not because of the attention itself, but because with so much random positive attention, my low self-esteem starts to kind of well up. You know what I mean? I start to feel like a fraud. I start to feel kind of like, even just like, it's like a Saturday and my friend's going to come over and I'm going to make some dinner, but I'm just like, oh, hold on, I got to set my room up because I'm going to do a podcast because these people want to hear what I have to say. Even though it's been a while, it still is weird. It still feels weird, to be honest with you. I mean, it's a pleasure doing it. I love doing it, but it and once I get into it, I'm fine. But before and after, I really go like, shit, you know, because I never was really going for that attention. I was going for just the work. I always like to say about Resident Evil, it's a home run for my career, but the bases were loaded. It's Resident Evil. It, like you said, it's one of the biggest game franchises ever. So just getting to be in it, it's already going to be awesome. So then for me now, I'm just like, let's get back on base. Let's get back on base. Let's keep working. Let's get this going again. You know what I mean? That's where my energy sort of comes from when it comes to that. But I mentioned Ben because Red Dead Redemption was one of my favorite games. It's always on. And I always just, sometimes I'll walk over and just go fishing for an hour.
That's amazing. Amazing game, man.
You know what I mean? It's so cool. So I just, and that's why I was kind of thrilled that the this Resident Evil, it's not considered a open world, but in a way it kind of is.
It is. It's not completely, you know, linear though. That's the thing. Like you're not just on a set path. You're kind of in this you're in a village and you're meant to explore it. So that's, you know, it is sort of open world. It's definitely not linear. So.
Yeah.
So with like talking about your auditioning and stuff, obviously, well, I mean, I shouldn't say obviously, I don't know, but did you know that you were auditioning for Resident Evil, or was it like a code name that when they gave you the script that you were reading for, and then when you got it, it's like, okay, this is Resident Evil, and you're like, well, holy shit. Like,
you know, it's interesting. Yeah, it's funny because Sarah Coates, who plays Marguerite Baker in Resident Evil 7, is a friend of mine. I've known her for years. I had French class with her in high school. And we were friends in high school. Then when we got out of high school, she went to a college. I went into the theater in Seattle, both up in the Pacific Northwest. And then we kind of lost track of each other. We stayed in contact, kind of. But then when I moved down here, she was still up there. And then she moved down here with her boyfriend, and she started doing little things here and there. And again, we didn't, you know, we would hang out every now and again, but it was kind of just, you know, how you doing? How you doing? And then when Resident Evil 7 came out and I found out that she was in that, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I called her and was like, I can't wait to play it. And this is so cool. And she's like, oh, thanks. You know, and then, you know, years went by. And then she called me and she said, hey, you know, I've been working since I got to do that game. I've been working in like, you know, production and stuff. And, you know, I'm helping out with casting. And they said that I'd be able to like sort of choose people that I know that maybe would be good for this. There's no guarantee. And I'm like, well, yeah, of course there's no guarantee. But so she had me come and audition for it.
Oh, that's cool.
And she, like a good worker and like a good NDA signer, she didn't say anything. And so then when I got the part, I think it wasn't until like a month or so later that I was talking to the producer and I said, what game is this for, by the way? And they said, it's Resident Evil 8, dude. Like I should have known.
Yeah, come on, you should have known that.
And as soon as they said Resident Evil 8, I was transported back in time to be 12 years old and playing the first game at a slumber party, pissing myself, not wanting my friends to know that I was as scared as I was. And it's pretty cool because, see, that's another thing for a voice actor. You know, a lot of times, like you were saying, what role would I have wanted to play in The Village? I get asked a lot too, what roles do I want to play just in general? And there's I think, I'm not going to speak for all voice actors, but I'll say there's sort of two schools of thought. There's one that they want to do a legacy voice. My friend Eric does the voice of Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Foghorn Leghorn, Tweety Bird, Marvin the Martian. And he was obsessed with the Looney Tunes when he was a kid. He's from Scarborough, Ontario. So he's a Canadian dude.
Just north of me.
Yeah. Filipino guy.
South of me, sorry.
So he does those. So that's like, it was his dream, those legacy voices. And then there's another thing is if you do those, that's great. But then you want to create one. You know, you want to be responsible for creating one. And I had my eye so much on legacy voices just because, like, to play a Batman villain or something, it would be really cool. And what would be neat is, the reason I think I wanted to do that is because I was so used to having people say to me at dinner parties or otherwise, what do you do for a living? And then I say, I'm a voice actor. And I go, what do you do? And then I go, well, I do this and this and this, and just have to list it off, and they don't know what I'm talking about. So I wanted to be able to have one where I could just say like this, and they would go, oh, I know what that is.
I'm Commander Shepard or the Master Chief, right? Or something.
Yeah, and I mean, like Samurai Jack was like that for a while. Samurai Jack was one of those things that, like, if you were a animation aficionado, I would say Samurai Jack and you know exactly what I was talking about. But so this one, so that's why it was kind of meaningful to me, in addition to be part of Resident Evil, not just because I played it when I was a kid, but because I get to be involved in this franchise that is historic, that makes history, and I got to create one. Obviously, I know the Duke's voice sounds a little bit about like other voices you've heard, whatever. At the time I didn't realize it, but people compare it a lot. People think it's Mark Hamill because it has that kind of like Jokerish kind of thing, which I mean, that's an amazing
compliment.
Compliment. Yeah. He is the shit. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, I don't even know what question I was answering. I think I just went off on a tangent there. Sorry. But
it was just if you knew that you were on Resident Evil.
Oh yeah. So I just, when they told me, I thought it was so cool. And then that is what made things really hard. It made it really hard, the NDA stuff, not talking about it, because Ben was so serious. That's another thing. Ben kind of inspired me. I mean, Ben was like so serious. He's like, dude, if you ever do one of these things, don't say a fucking word to anyone. And I was like, okay, all right. And he's right. He's right. Because those NDAs are no joke. And what was funny was, years ago, I mean, for years, what I did to sort of support myself was I was a bouncer at different bars in Hollywood, and then also a bartender. I just became a bartender. And so there was times when patrons that knew I did voice acting and stuff would come in and they'd say, hey man, we working on anything new? And I would just go like, no, not anything new. And then they'd be like, oh, it's okay, man, you'll get something someday. And I'm like, yeah, man, yeah, thanks. Little do they know I'm working on the biggest franchise in the history of video games, but I just couldn't.
Oh man, yeah, that's a whole level of stress. I have a little bit of that because I do some review games and we have embargo dates and stuff, but it's not to that level of stress, man. If I was acting in Resident Evil 8 and I could not talk about it, no way.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, that's the thing too, is I was always, it's like, I mean, not to get all melodramatic or anything, but I'm from the Pacific Northwest and I moved here, and I'm kind of one of the only people in my family to move away. And I really kind of bummed my dad out. I mean, obviously he's like, go off, go do your thing. But I think it's like leaving home and stuff. And my dad is a big horror guy. He's not a video game guy, but he loves horror, and he just and that was another dream of mine, to be involved with something that my dad knew about, that I could call him up and say like, hey man, I did this thing. And that he would, I mean, my dad's proud of me, but you know what I mean? Like I wanted to be able to like report back to him that I had done something really great, and that it was like, not that I had done something great, but I got to be involved with something great. And since my dad, Resident Evil, that name is, when you say Resident Evil, it means something to anyone. It's either means something, it means the games, or it means those movies, because those movies were really popular, so that's another thing. And then what was really neat is, speaking of my dad for a second, my dad was at the store the other day, and these two guys that are bagging groceries, he was just like, whatever, checking out. And then the one guy was like, dude, have you played Resident Evil Village? And he's like, oh, I have. You know what my favorite character is? That merchant guy, the Duke. He's like, blah, blah. And my dad just kind of like, got a chance to go over and be like, hey guys, I don't mean to interrupt you, but my son is the voice of the Duke. And then he pulled up my picture and everything. And my dad got to be a hero at his local grocery store.
Free groceries for a year.
I know, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, man, like we were kind of mentioning earlier, I feel like you did hit that legendary status, dude. Like your character was my favorite in Resident Evil 8, and you did create your own voice, man. It's like you said, I can't explain the way you did all the different layers of your voice, but it's incredible, man. So it's
the most meaningful thing, I mean, it's the one of the most meaningful things is, as you can kind of see behind me, I'm a bit of a fan of a lot of this stuff, different awesome. Animation and whatever. And so I know how meaningful it is to like have engagement with the people who do the things that you like. And so that has been another, you want to talk about, as much as I said that I was kind of uncomfortable with the attention. One aspect of the attention that has just been amazing is now I have this power that I can use for good, that you can just wave a little magic wand and it just blows somebody's mind. Like, the cameo thing. to be honest with you, I wasn't going to do it because it felt kind of weird. I felt weird charging for that kind of thing. But then I was like, all right, I'll do it. And people would send me these messages saying like, my kid just got in a car accident. He's been really bummed out, but the game came out and he can't get out of bed, but he's been playing the game. And that's all he's been talking about is the game. Would you please, tell him to get well and give him some words of encouragement as the Duke? So I'll just be in my car somewhere, whatever, and I'll pull over and put the thing on me and just be like,
you're going to be fine. If you need any healing salves, whatever you need, I can provide.
You send that off, and then you get a message back from the mom saying, oh, he loved it, and he had the biggest smile on his face, and that just makes me feel like $1,000,000. And so that stuff is incredible. I mean, and even just now talking to you guys and just kind of snapping into the voice and seeing you guys get a kick out of it, like that stuff is super meaningful, and I love it. And that's actually the kind of attention that I was going for. I wanted to be able to like provide, because there's so many people. I go to these conventions. I go to Monsterpalooza and Horror Hound convention. I go all over the country, go to these different conventions. And when I get a chance to meet some people that were in, Nightmare on Elm Street 5 or something, I get a huge kick out of it. You know what I mean?
That's awesome.
I gotta look at I pretty much covered all my questions, man.
Yeah, it's just an honor to talk to you about your experiences on what you're doing, and I appreciate you for coming on the show. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you're about 3 hours difference, so it's probably around close to dinner time now. So
I did have one more question.
Go
one more question to close off of it.
I'm good until 6:30. We can do this for another half hour if you want.
Whatever works. I'm good with whatever works.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So one of my good friends of mine that I do the TV show with, actually, Scott, he's always wanted to do voice acting, and he's nailed Snake from Metal Gear Solid. Of course.
Yeah.
That classic, iconic. David Hayter, is that
David Hayter?
Yeah, David Hayter. Yeah. Right. So and this is just something he's always aspired to do. So I was just like, if there's one thing, I mean, it's hard to say one thing to recommend for somebody who wants to get involved with it, but if you could maybe recommend a thing or two for somebody who wanted to get into this kind of how do you go about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that any voice actor, because you guys are great at this, and you're going to keep doing this, and you're going to keep talking to different voice actors, and the one thing that you're going to discover is that nobody has one. There's no one story. There's no one pathway to get to do this kind of stuff. There's obviously preparation and luck and where you are and different things like that. So you can kind of just speak in generalities. And I think with voice acting is a very alluring thing. I mean, there's people, there's a lot of times people are like, what's weird? I want to be a voice actor. And I'm like, that's not fucking weird. Everybody wants to be a voice. Every actor wants to do voice because they think it's easy, or they think, one thing or the other, or they think it's a sort of a quick way to get noticed. And in some ways it can be. But I think what's super important is for your friend and anyone who wants to be get involved with voice acting is figure out a way with rudimentary equipment in your own home, figure out a way to record yourself doing voices, reading lines or whatever, and really do that. It's something you can do on your own, because there's something to be said about when you're speaking to a microphone and then you hear your voice back. Obviously, when you're a kid, you're always like, oh my God, my voice sounds so different. And it does sound different. But it's funny that to go back a little bit to that question you asked me in the beginning, my brother and I used to put blank tapes in our, in this tape recorder, and we would do radio shows and stuff. And we would bounce back and forth. We'd do this for hours. So I don't know where they are, but there are tapes of my brother and I hosting a show. And it's because we heard our voices coming out of that thing. And it just did something to me. So I would suggest that anybody wanting to get involved with voiceover, get yourself a USB mic, a condenser microphone. They're not very expensive. Plug it into your computer, get GarageBand or whatever program you use, and then just start talking and start doing voices, and do the sort of legacy voices that you can do, like Snake and different things like that, and get those over here. and be like, okay, I can do those voices, but then what voices have people not heard yet that I can do, and do those voices and kind of play around with it. Because if it does something for you and it spurs you on, then keep doing it. But if it doesn't, if it kind of bores you, then don't do it. Then just don't do it. Do something else. But if you really dig it, then start to look around for classes and things, because there are classes everywhere. And the problem with acting, getting an acting class and finding a good acting class is like finding a good therapist. There are people that teach acting classes, but it doesn't mean they're qualified to teach acting classes. Shit. And most of them aren't, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm not trying to be a dickhead, but I mean, like it's sometimes it could be a scam. But if you go in and you find a really good teacher that gives you sort of the fundamentals, then they can sort of lead you down the quote unquote right path. Because the most important thing a voice actor who's trying to be a voice actor can have is proof, not just intention. Saying I want to be a voice actor doesn't mean anything. But if you say I want to be a voice actor, and then you can follow it up with, here, listen to this, and have something, have a reel. And so for me, when I first got started, before I did anything, I did that. I got a microphone and I just started dicking around, doing all the voices that I knew I could do, and then trying to come up with different ones, and trying to come up with, because really when it comes to generating voices, it's all just about a tone. If you're standing out in public and you see some guy waiting for a bus, and the guy's and he looks like this, then maybe his tone is
a zombie.
So then you just start talking. So you go, I wonder when the bus is going to get here. And that's a voice. That becomes a voice. And so it can be, I don't know what you guys are talking about, but would you like to come in? Come on in. That's a voice too. You know what I mean? It's just one tone. And so then what's neat is if you record one or two lines of the different voices, then learn in GarageBand how to do a little bit of editing, just kind of snipping off the extraneous pieces, putting them together. And then you can hear the voices all in a row. And you can hear 8 different voices in the span of 2 minutes, and see how that feels to you. You know what I mean? So it really is about experimentation and figuring out a way to generate proof and education on the matter. Now I'm not bragging. I'm actually kind of embarrassed about this, but I don't have any education on the matter whatsoever. I basically have just do what I think I should do, and it happens to be working out, which is really nice. However, now that I'm still pursuing it, I start to go like, okay, I'm here, I'm getting to do it, I'm getting to audition. How do I get better? How do I get better? So I'm actually starting to think about doing some classes myself, just trying to, because I'm only relying on my instinct, but I need to take it a step further. I did a thing the other day, which was a public service announcement that I just happened to get, and I had to use my own voice, and it was terrifying because I was so self-conscious. So I think I need to take a class on that. I need to take a class on how to just read a public service announcement and not have it sound like this or some ridiculous voice. You know what I mean? So yeah, so in a nutshell, that's just a bunch of different random shit. I mean, again, like I said, there's no one clear path,
I think the other thing too for and I know this is something that Katie had mentioned, was be prepared to accept a lot of rejection. And you had mentioned that before, you don't take it personal. And even when we were we had our first guest on, David Bateson, who played Agent 47, he said you're lucky if you get a producer or someone listen to 5 seconds of your audio clip, they know within the first second, no, it's not going to work. And if you can get anything more. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is too, I mean, like the story I told you about Sarah bringing me in, who knows what would have happened if I found that audition somewhere else and Sarah had nothing to do with it. And I just submitted what I thought I should do. And they saw Aaron LaPlante and it didn't mean anything to them. And they just went, that could have very easily have happened. But I think because Sarah was in the room saying that's my friend, he's great, he's so nice, let's have him come in. Who's to say, you know what I mean? Who's to say I might not have even gotten the part? I mean, it's so delicate. And it's amazing too, like all these things that I send nobody has ever, except for that one time when they said you didn't get it, but nobody's ever called me up and been like, hello, is this Aaron LaPlante? Hi. Yeah, this is Greg. I was working on the production you auditioned for. You should quit voice acting. You are a piece of shit and you're awful at your job, and just stop working or go kill yourself. Nobody's never happened. It's never happened.
I hope not.
They won't give you the part, and they just don't call you. So in a way, there is no fucking rejection. If you just audition and let it go and don't sit there, like eating and being like, they haven't called, because a lot of actors do that. And if you do that, and then by the next day they haven't called, you wake up feeling kind of rejected. But if you just audition for it and then just go like, fucking whatever, you know what I mean? Like, I care about an audition while I'm making it. And then when I send it off, I could care less about it. I could care less about it because also too, and this is going to sound really arrogant, but this is just me being self-confident. I'm right for every fucking part I audition for. If I got every part I auditioned for, I would do something with it, do something good with it, probably. Whether I'm right for it, I mean, that's up to them to decide. But when I do an audition, I send it off and I just go, if they give me the part, it's fine. If they don't, it's none of my fucking business. And with voiceover lately, it's been really difficult because, like I said, in the beginning of this, that famous actors are getting in on the game, and not just famous actors, comedians, marginally notable YouTube fucking personalities or whatever, you know what I mean? I've got a lot of friends in casting, and they would love nothing more than to just cast amazing journeyman voice actors, but they can't. They have to see who the hottest, whoever the fuck is, you know what I mean? So that's kind of the way. However, with so many platforms, Netflix and Amazon and all this crazy shit going on, there's so much work to be had. So that's the thing that kind of keeps me going, that I can just kind of keep doing this. And it is entirely possible for me to be able to just carve out a little sliver of space that I can exist in, sign a few autographs, go to a convention, what the fuck, whatever, make a living, collect all my stupid bullshit that I like to collect, and be fine. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's what I'm counting on,
It's awesome. Like, the life of a voice actor, well, an actor in general. I mean, it's not always going to be like sunshine and daisies or whatever that saying is, but I mean, it seems like it's a lot of fun. And especially, again, being part of such a big like franchise, it's like, I mean, I would assume that a lot of people would strive to be part of a Skyrim or a Resident Evil or a Final Fantasy or something. And I mean, you certainly have done that. So it's great.
It's a wonderful feeling. I mean, yeah, for sure. It's a wonderful feeling to just kind of think about, because that's another thing too. I always kind of hoped, and maybe this sounds a bit melodramatic, but I always hope that no matter what happens and no matter what I do in my career, I always had that hope that I would be involved with something that would kind of last, or that people would that would be really meaningful to a lot of people, not just people in my own little thing. And that has happened, and it's amazing. But then the neurotic person in me goes like, okay, but that's not the only one I get to be in, right? I get to be in more. I get to do more, right? I mean, it's not just Resident Evil, right? Like that's the thing that starts to come up. You start to go like, well, I'm not even 40 years old. Like I've got more. I can do more. I can do a lot more, But then gratitude brings you back. I mean, my girlfriend is always really good about reminding me of that. Of just be grateful, just have fun, and just find ways that you can be grateful. And really the major thing that I can be grateful for is what I told you guys before, just about engaging with people and having it mean something to them. Because it's easy for me, it means nothing to me. Like just as easy as just like doing one of those cameos, or, people send me messages on Instagram sometimes, and to message them back, and they get a kick out of that. And that's really nice, to just, you're feeling kind of bad about yourself one day or whatever, and then you get to like make somebody's day, and it makes you feel a little bit better about yourself,
That's awesome. Nate, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
Oh, well, I mean, I got all my questions answered.
Well, I got to say, you guys, I'm thank you so much for asking me some different questions. Because as much as like some of the things I've said before, but there's been a lot of stuff like asking me about, you know, specifics about how I got into it and stuff, and asking me about Genndy. I really appreciate that.
Oh, not a problem. I'm actually just my buddy that asked the question. He's like, "Hey, are you still chatting?" And I just let him know that you appreciated that question. And again,
Nice.
I mean, it's like you said, you go on all these shows, and it's more often than not, like, how did you get into it? Like, did you know about it? And it's, I mean, each interview, it'll always be different because how the questions asked, but ultimately I find like it's almost always the same questions. Even if you were to go on like Jimmy Kimmel or anything like that, like they'll put their own spin on it. But I mean, it's the first time I've had Nathan on doing this, and like we've got a chat lined up probably in September with Paula about
Nice.
about both roles in 7 and 8. And Nate's my Resident Evil guy, so he said that he'd definitely be interested in coming back for that one. So
yeah,
Then,
I mean, this
an
is
honor,
great.
man.
Yeah, this is great. And Brad, you know, just keep it up, you know, like
Thank
what
you.
you had said before, just keep doing it, keep it up, and know that, you know, it's like you were saying, it sometimes it's hard to get a response, but don't let these fucking voice actors fool you. They're not that important. They're not even, not at all. So just be persistent and polite, and you'll be just fine. You know
oh yeah,
I mean?
like, well, I mean, there's for me, it's like reaching out. Like I don't, I don't know, I don't really know how to describe it. Like to me, it almost feels, I don't want to seem too stalkerish, because I'm sure you get a lot of that where if you don't answer immediately a message, or not just you, but voice actors or normal actors in general, like it becomes stalkerish where someone's like, "Hey, hello," and then you don't answer for a day because, you know, heaven forbid you're busy filming. And then you've got 16 messages throughout like 3 days. It's like, okay, that's like, and I would never do that, but like I find if I message more than, if I go a third time, it's like, all right, that's borderline. Maybe they're busy and they'll get back to me. Like it took Katie a while, but that's because she was doing press tours and all this stuff for Resident Evil. And I mean, I'm the small person out of a very big YouTube world. And it's just, for me, it means a lot. Just even like you said, getting a response back on Instagram, like it's just,
Well, what's great too is like, you know, you're going to publish this one, you got the one. Then like, you know, anybody that you reach out to now is going to get a chance. I mean, like when you contacted me, you're like, here's what I've already done. So then I was able to see it and be like, oh, okay, this guy, you know. But there was one guy recently that just was weird, and I didn't respond to him. And then he kept saying, every morning he would say like, I'm waiting for your response. And I was just like, dude. And then finally I got an email and I said, where the fuck did you get my email? And he's like, oh, one of my friends in the press gave it to me, but they asked me not to share it with you. And I was like, well, your friend fucked up, because if you already know that that's inappropriate. That person obviously does, because they don't want you to tell me. So fuck off. And the guy was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. But that pissed me off to no end. So that's like, that's a good example of the wrong way to do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like Brad, like my boss says, man, like Drew, you know, we started off like my TV show. We started off just on Barrie, like the city I live in, just the local network, and obviously on YouTube as a very small, you know, YouTube platform. But we've now evolved onto like esports television, Tubi, and a few of these other kind of streaming platforms. And you know, it's definitely just been a grind, man. You know, you start off here.
That's all it is. It's all you can do.
Yeah. You just gotta. The big thing was, though, I guess, is just like Drew said, man. He's like, you just gotta ask, man. That's all you gotta do. There's no harm.
Yeah, for sure, which is great. And you know, like in the future, I will, you know, I now that I've met you, if you need me to do anything for your show or need me to come on there or whatever, let me know.
For sure. No, I appreciate that. Like, I actually do have one last request before I let you go. Does the Duke have anything that he wants to say to the Nerdcast?
To the Nerdcast.
Well, the boys of the Nerdcast. Well, it's good to see you. Anyone but anyone has heard of the likes of you, although that castle arouses suspicion. Welcome to the Duke's Emporium. What are you buying? Just something an old friend of mine used to say. Well, I want to wish you the happiest luck for your future in podcasting. And should you need anything for the road ahead, you know where to find me. Thank you for your patronage.
Well, thanks again. And again, I really appreciate the olive branch if I do need anything. But
Yeah, and
we
I was gonna
will.
say, Nathan, you too, for your TV show. If you want me to come on there and
Yeah,
do
thanks, man. Definitely. I'll get your email or something. And
I'll give it to him, and I'll say, don't say where you got it from. No.
That's right. And some fucking guy from Poland or whatever. Fuck off.
That's great.
So funny.
Well, we'll let you go. I know you said you had something at 6:30, but Nate, if you want to stick around, we'll just we'll debrief and then we'll call it a night.
All right, sounds good. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Guys, have a great one.
huge
Thanks a lot.
privilege,
Thanks.
man.
Take care.
Yeah.
Cheers.
So,
Wow, that guy is awesome, man.
it's and you know what, like I told this to Drew, like when he got David and Jane on, I said, like, and this is for anything really, for any voiceover actor or even actor, it's like everyone's like, oh, what's your secret? And now I'm getting asked that. It's like, you just reach out, like there's no secret. But I mean, I owe you guys a lot because you and me go way back. But I mean, like Drew recently and just having that camaraderie on Discord and whatnot, and it's a real good community to be a part of. So it's and that's why it's like when he agreed to come on, like Adam and Clayton, first of all, they don't want the game spoiled for them, so I don't think that they should be watching this podcast. Mind you, we didn't really talk about.
We didn't spoil anything, honestly.
No,
We were pretty
like,
good. I stayed pretty quietly on, like I said, the creepy baby part. That's all I said. I didn't want to say
Well, we talked about
anything.
that with Katie too, because that was one of the creepy parts in in
Horrifying,
the whole game where the baby's chasing after you. Once again, we wanted to thank Aaron LaPlante for coming on. Nate, you can plug your show. Go for it. It's that time of night. So where can people find you?
All right. Well, we have our Discord, Inside the Game, and our website, insidethegame.ca. We are all on a bunch of streaming platforms: esports television, Tubi, a number of other ones I can't really just name off. But yeah, we do a TV show on video games, guys. Reviews, discussion, the news, live streams. We do it all basically, and every day, Monday to Friday, we also have a daily show on the news. So if you can tune on to that on Twitch, and on YouTube is also where you can catch all of this stuff. So hopefully, I'm not very good at plugging things, I guess, but I hope you enjoyed that interview. I had a blast doing that, man. That was so cool. Aaron was great, man.
It was a lot of fun, and again, it's awesome that he's willing to help both you and me and the show. I'm sure if you wanted him to like do a shout out to your much better half or something, but we'll call it a night there, and we'll pick up with you. I'll let you know when we're happening the chat with Paula, who played Angie, the creepy little horror doll in Resident Evil Village.
It's gonna be interesting talking to her and see how you get into that role.
Well, she a horror she started off in Doc McStuffins.
Oh, God.
Well, not started off,
hilarious.
but like you go from like this Disney Channel to a doll that wants to murder you.
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks again for coming on. Thank you for everyone for watching. Have a great night.